Life Audio.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
We want families to come here and gain insightful strategies that empower them to successfully teach diverse learners at home.
Hosted by founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool, Peggy Ployer.
Our goal is that these powerful weekly conversations will boost your confidence to cultivate the best at-home learning environment for your student.
For more homeschool resources, go to spedhomeschool.com. You're listening to Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Peggy Ployer. We'll start the conversation with Peggy and her guests next.
The best-selling illustrated Bible for kids and teens, the Action Bible, is now better than ever. The Action Bible Faith in Action Edition is an interactive Bible specifically created for kids and teens ages 7 to 15. The Faith in Action Edition is designed to engage young readers in God's Word through hundreds of vividly illustrated Bible stories in chronological order with activities and games. Readers will grow in God's Word by using QR codes, providing free access to over 2,000 devotionals, hundreds of prayers, character stories, teaching videos, maps, timelines, and much more. Additionally, the Action Bible Faith in Action Edition allows readers to explore the major themes of the Bible like courage, faith, hope, love, service, trust, and wisdom. Each theme provides practical advice on how to live out God's Word. The Action Bible Faith in Action Edition is the best interactive Bible you can purchase for your child or teen. Purchase your copy today at Sam's Club, Barnes & Noble, or Amazon.
This is Perseus Poku, host of the Sound Reasoning Ministry podcast. Learn how to share and defend your faith by listening to us weekly. Subscribe at lifeaudio.com.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com. Here's Peggy Ployer.
Today, we are going to talk about tips for college admission for students with learning struggles. And my special guest is Kate Stone. Welcome, Kate. Glad to have you on the show.
Hi, Peggy. Thank you so much for having me. Absolutely.
I'm excited as we are diving in this month specifically to that post-high school planning. You know, parents often will get stressed when their students, they say there's 3 times in homeschooling that they get most stressed. Once is when they're trying to teach their child to read. The second is when they're starting high school. And the third is when they're launching their student. And I remember just myself going, did I teach them everything? Did I prepare for everything? And so we really want to focus this month on topics that really ground you in, yes, you're doing everything that you can to help your students. So Kate is going to specifically talk to us about for those students that are considering going to college and that admission process that just, if you've never been through it, it just seems like it's a total foreign territory. So I'm excited to have you share with us. And I'd love as we're getting started, for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and then how you got involved in helping students in this manner.
Oh, well, that is a long story that I will keep short.
Okay.
But when I went to NYU, I studied education, and I ended up, going to Southeast Asia for about 4 years, where I was a Princeton University teaching fellow, and I was teaching English and creative writing, and I love storytelling. I segued from Asia to Hollywood, where I pursued acting because I loved the process of trying to understand human nature and telling those stories. Oh. So as an actor, you tend to have a lot of time on your hands. And I had this teaching skill. And in between auditions and jobs and being on set, there's a lot of waiting around. I thought, well, I can teach online, and I really want to teach writing and creative writing. And I found this niche with college admissions. And I found a mentor. I learned everything he knew about the college admissions process, but specifically how to write a great essay and how to tell your story. So I was applying those script writing techniques and those storytelling techniques that I had learned through hours and hours of acting classes and studying scripts and things to the essay itself, the college essay itself. And I just loved it because it was a long process. look, college essays, when you're writing college essays, it's iterative. So it's not like a one-off, like you're going to write an essay, it's going to be done. It really is a process of examining self, and figuring out what is my story.
Right.
And some 17-year-olds are like, well, I have nothing to say, or, I haven't been through anything, but a lot of what I do is taking them through exercises and content generation exercises that show them and prove to them, you do. There are things about you that are only you and uniquely you. And it's about, that's what I do. And I do a lot of free workshops, and a lot of it is that initial getting them excited. It's not an English essay. It's not a 5-paragraph essay. It's like, here are all the rules you learned. Now break them.
Wow.
Get creative and be playful and be true. And vulnerable about who it is you really are. As well as incorporating those qualities, values, interests, and skills that you'll be bringing with you to a campus, of course. But it's really the only place in an application where you can be authentically you.
Yeah. That's such great advice. Because I remember, I think my oldest, when he was in community college, ended up writing his essay. It was part of his English classes. And when I read it, I was like, this is kind of odd, but it fulfilled everything that you talked about. And he got accepted in lots of places, because he wrote this story about how he got up one morning when we were living in our farmhouse, and it was only 50 some degrees because he lived in our attic there, and talking about how cold the floor was, and going downstairs and putting all his stuff on to go outside and take care of the animals. And then finding one of our lambs was dead, and the grieving process he went through during that. And it was so real and so authentic. And like you said, it was very impactful and really showed his heart. And so, that's just so cool that you can help students with that. Cause like you said, sometimes they maybe even forget those things, or just how important they are in forming who they are.
Well, if you don't think about this in terms of story, like I live my life from the perspective of story. Like I'm a storyteller. I guess maybe it's like my Irish background, the bard, and I've always thought of like living my life as like, well, wouldn't it be great to live my life as a great story? Like, what would a great story include? What choices could I make that would, at the end of my life, when I'm with God and I get to see my life review, what would be fun to watch? What would I feel good about? What would, and so I think when you're so close to it, when you're a teenager, you don't necessarily look at life that way.
No, exactly.
So it's kind of like showing them what is a good story, and getting them to, not take for granted their own experiences just because they're so close to them.
Yes. And oftentimes those teenagers too, they're always thinking about what other people perceive, especially their peer group and how they perceive it, instead of maybe those more experienced in life that realize how important those are. So having a mentor like you to come alongside and say, no, wait, let's stop here. This is something good, because they might even dismiss it too.
I think I'd like to think, if you're with your child and you're helping them figure out their story, it may not be one, it may be multiple, it might be a story that comes together in a form of a montage, and how you can help them best is really looking at all the pieces and going, well, this is a puzzle. How do they all fit together?
Right.
And that's one way of looking at this process, is you're taking all these pieces and going, okay, well, tell me more about that. That sounded interesting. What, can you riff on that and just talk about it? And you're listening for the puzzle pieces and how they might come together in an organized way. That's most compelling. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Kind of like a director fitting the scenes of your movie together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a great way to look at it. I love that. So we have some viewers on with us right now. If you have questions or comments about college admissions, make sure that you put them in the feed where you're watching, and we'll make sure to include those in our conversation live here right now. We would love for you to be part of our conversation. So we have some questions we've come up with ahead of time, but like I said, we would always love to include yours in as well. So Kate, I think we'll kind of just dive into the first question that we're going to talk about. You said that college admissions have changed in 7 specific ways. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Yeah. So, what initially admissions was focusing mostly on quantitative.
After a word from our sponsor, we'll dive back into this conversation. The best-selling illustrative Bible for kids and teens, the Action Bible, is now better than ever. The Action Bible Faith in Action Edition is an interactive Bible specifically created for kids and teens ages 7 to 15. The Faith in Action Edition is designed to engage young readers in God's Word through hundreds of vividly illustrated Bible stories in chronological order with activities and games. Readers will grow in God's Word by using QR codes, providing free access to over 2,000 devotionals, hundreds of prayers, character stories, teaching videos, maps, timelines, and much more. Additionally, the Action Bible Faith in Action Edition allows readers to explore the major themes of the Bible like courage, faith, hope, love, service, trust, and wisdom. Each theme provides practical advice on how to live out God's Word. The Action Bible Faith in Action Edition is the best interactive Bible you can purchase for your child or teen. Purchase your copy today at Sam's Club, Barnes & Noble, or Amazon.
Life Audio presents Bridges with Monica Schmelter.
That we have an enduring hope that can't be taken away when we are in Christ. And to know that we have that, right? And eternal salvation, because this world can be so busy and so dark that we can forget that. Right? Because sometimes I get caught in the trappings of what's going on in my life this moment. And while I have to recognize that, that's not it.
Continue listening on lifeaudio.com or wherever you find your podcast.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by Sped Homeschool. Go to spedhomeschool.com to get resources and support for teaching your unique learner at home.
It's now shifted to this very qualitative assessment, right? So we've moved away from test scores. Of course, there are certain GPAs and academic quotas that must be hit in order to be allowed in, let's say, to the pool.
There's thresholds, yes.
The threshold for holistic admissions.
Yeah.
However, there are so many more students now that meet those academic thresholds that once you enter these holistic reviews for admissions, it's all qualitative. It's all about the stories you tell. And they really care about the type of student, the character, engagement, the drive, impact, the agency, your dreams, and how you really think about these things. If you've thought about these things, if these things are developed for you. I think Harvard admissions, and I'm going to use them because they had a big scandal. Maybe people are aware of their admissions scandal that happened a few years back.
Yeah.
And when I looked through some of the filings, what stood out to me was that the number one marker for admission was a personal development journey that students had gone on, that they had been able to show the distance traveled. That's probably, if viewers are going to walk away, if listeners out there, parents, if you're going to walk away with one thing that you need to know for the college admissions process, it's that show distance traveled, where you've come and who you are now and where you're going. That's probably the most important piece of this whole process. And really what they're looking for, because what they want to do is they want to advocate for you. So admissions is, you want to make it easy, essentially, for admissions to go to the admissions board and say, look at this student. He's, he was this, he's an inventor. And now it's like, because clear stories it kind of goes back to my point before, where the clear stories are just always, stories sell, facts tell, right? Stories are always more sellable because they're easily told. They connect to us emotionally and spiritually.
Right.
And it's really how and it's not just the college essay, it applies to everything in life. It's what we're doing now, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. One of our viewers says any resources that they should be utilizing to help teach them fundamental skills to work up to college essay or writing. And she had previously asked about curriculum, but I think that's probably a better question. Just anything that they could be doing to be working on those skills of how to get from that onto paper.
So I think one of the best skills is teaching them how to write speeches and public speaking communication. I think that's probably I think this is not just the college essay, but it applies to everything. If students can learn how to tell a story concisely, in a way that is evocative and compelling, and be able to speak that. So you're not just writing it, but you're speaking it, where suddenly you see where it works, where it doesn't work, how people respond, and getting that practice, writing speeches, writing creatively, personal stories, memoir type, like I have, I'm putting together a curriculum now, and actually I run a lot of free workshops for this exact thing. So if you are interested, I'm going to be doing some experimental creative writing workshops to help students develop these skills. But awesome. I think start with speech writing, creative writing, and public speaking. Those are going to be skills that will help them with everything, whether it's applying for a job, doing interviews, connecting with mentors, connecting with anybody, working their way up through their career path, you name it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great because it can look so good on paper, and then you just read it out loud and go, "What was I thinking?"
Well, one of the things I always come across with my students is when I see something that's like, "Ooh, it's very wordy," or it's unclear, because it's so important to preserve the student's voice. So as much as the parents or the coaches, the worst thing that can happen is you overcoach them. You give them too much feedback. And it becomes not their work and not their voice, and it doesn't come from them. It's what we put on top of it based on our experience, and suddenly it's like this whole other story that's not really. That is also felt by admissions when things like that happen,
right?
And so asking them, "Hey, read this aloud. What does it sound like to you?"
Like you? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Say that, just say it. And what would you say if you were just talking to a friend, and that's really what the simplicity, not over wordy, trying to sound smart, trying to impress. Right. It's more about an openness and making yourself available to actually what you think about things, like allow them to see your process of discovering, and in acting, they always say like, discover the moment. Like the audience wants to see the discovery. So does this apply to admissions? They want to see you discover your own thought process. Come to your own realizations in the writing.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have to say to Lisa too, since I've seen some homeschool curriculum on public speaking, be very careful. Some of them are very much trying to make your student into a professional speaker, which is very unauthentic. And I've actually pulled my student out of some of those because I thought this is not teaching them how to relate to the audience. This is just teaching them how to get up and, internalize all their fears and just get the words out and make them sound good. That's totally different than what Kate is talking about.
Yeah. I'm more like talking about it's part like performance, really.
Yeah.
And if you speak with any professional speaker, and I know Peggy, you speak so much, so much of it is understanding your audience. Who are you talking to? And speaking really directly to them. It's not really about you. It's about the audience always. Yes. So, and also that doesn't necessarily completely apply to the college essay because it is about you. But whenever, your point about public speaking is yes, it's a yes and your story and bringing the audience in as well.
Yeah. So what else has changed in this admission process?
Well, I suppose a lot. Just trying to think about what I could touch on.
So maybe like, especially for those parents who have been through that process, like 30 years ago, and are going, this is how it's done. And this is not how it's done anymore.
Well, the standard for extracurricular activities has changed a lot.
Really? Okay.
It's definitely grown higher in terms of, well, they want to know if you want to do engineering or business, you have to have math. You have to have maximized the math options available to you. And I know homeschooling is going to be quite different. Yeah. But communicating that you have taken classes at your local college, or, you have maximized as much of the opportunities available to you in these areas. That is so important, because if you say you want to do something and you don't really have the foundation to back it up, they don't really know how to place a student like that. Right. It's a big question mark to them. Okay. And I would say, I'm a big fan of taking one thing you're interested in and taking multiple classes and deepening that interest, so that when you're writing these essays, it's kind of like, I think of it as organizing it by step ladder. Okay, this is where it began. This is how I evolved it. This is what I started as inspiration based on the skills I learned. And this is what I want to do with it next. So you have to think of it kind of like that. And I know that might seem and feel at times contrived, but isn't that how but I think that's how we all operate. It's like we're all building. We're building our empire, our life empire. And so just making sure that if there is an interest that, and if your child does know what they want to study at college, so they've really maximized the opportunities around them, whether online or in person at the local college, at home in the homeschool curriculum. And that also, if they don't know, that's okay too. But you can always make a great case for, but I've been interested this, and this, and there's opportunities for finding really interesting connections between interests as well. Yeah. How do these interests connect? How can I find ways to connect them? Right. Yeah, that's what I would say. And I hope that's helpful in terms of understanding the extracurricular. I also want to say it really depends on what your goals are. With all of these changes, if you're shooting for top 25 schools, all of the things I'm saying are going to be very important. If you're applying to different schools, smaller schools, it just depends. These are still going to matter, but they're going to be a little bit more flexible. And it's going to be focused mainly on how your values and how you've demonstrated those values intersect and complement the school and their values. How do they relate, and how can you contribute and make an impact at their school and bring something of value to their campus? Yeah. So doing the research ahead of time and knowing exactly what kind of student they're looking for and what kind of student that they want to cultivate. And is your student good for that community? I mean, a lot of times we have to convince our students because my son wanted, when he was first applying, he's like, I want to go to this school. And it's like, we went to visit the school and it just didn't feel right. He still applied, but he didn't get accepted. And I was like, oh, thank goodness. And so, but yeah, it's very much the culture that your student has to fit with too. And it may not be always the top school for what they're doing, but yet it's going to form them to be the right, they're going to have that right formation during those college years if they're on a track at a school that really fits with them. You know what? I also want to say two things about what you just shared is, number one, most college decisions are made based on that gut feeling. Yeah. So visiting schools and paying attention to how you feel is so important. That internal guidance system will really tell you what is right and what is wrong. Yeah. sometimes it's like you can take in all the data but this isn't really the best. It just doesn't, it's really the gut that tells you what's where to be and where you're going to be happy and where you're going to fit best. And then the second piece of what you said was, if you're on a track, it's like you don't necessarily need to go for these really competitive schools if you know what you want to do. Like if you know you have a track towards engineering or towards wanting medicine or towards whatever it is, you can look at schools that actually have really high rates of admittance, let's say to postgraduate engineering or postgraduate medical school. And you can go to schools that will help you sort of track into in ways that these other schools maybe don't have such high acceptance rates for, let's say, medicine or let's say postgraduate engineering.
Yeah.
Right. So when you think about that, you can look these up. I don't actually have the website, but I'm going to find it. There's statistics you can find on these schools. In terms of how many students get accepted postgraduate to this. I mean, that is for the folks out there who are quite specific about what they want to do and they know.
Right. Yeah.
So not everybody knows.
Great advice. Right. Exactly. Sometimes you just need to get started and trying to figure that out. And because my oldest actually started at a community college, and then really we kind of skipped a lot of the first part of the admissions, like the ACT, SAT, those types of things. He still had to write his paper and, all of that. But it was kind of like that. We almost used that as a first step, to get into a regular 4-year college too. And that worked well.
Community college is amazing. Especially if you are not ready or the options don't feel right, or you're just not sure what you want to do. It's a great way to save money. It's a great way to, if you rock it at community college, a lot of these community colleges have streams into these bigger institutions, right? Have relationships and partnerships with them. So there's a higher chance for transfer, as long as you're, kicking butt at community college and contributing and, doing everything you can to be engaged and to keep your grades high. But that's a great option. I'm a big fan of community college before a 4-year institution, especially for students who are just not ready. It's just like,
or they just need to live at home.
Need a little bit more time.
More time, life skills. Yes. Independent living skills need to be worked on. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. There's another question for you, but Lisa had asked me one question too about curriculum specifically for that kind of writing. I know IEW is a great curriculum, especially if you have a student who learns on a methodical basis. They tend to help them to build word lists and how do you use a thesaurus and like expand on that word that they've used. So for a child who thinks very systematically, I found that that's a really good curriculum to use because it kind of walks them through that process. If they tend to be a more creative child, Clearwater Press is one that I would recommend. They teach different forms of writing like poetry and short stories. And I incorporated that with my daughter who's an artist. And so she actually illustrated her own magazine while writing all the pieces for it over a 1-year period. So that tends to work for the more creative types if you're working on those writing skills. So that's just my feedback on that. But so Lisa had also asked, why did they change the writing essay for college admissions? I guess from a very technical paper, I guess, is what probably we were used to in the era when college admissions from us who are in their 50s to our kids now that we're talking more storytelling. What is that all cultural as far as shift, or was that just that they were finding as far as admissions, they just weren't getting the right students from what they were asking?
That's actually a really interesting question. And my instinct tells me, yes, it's probably partially cultural. But also they had so much quantitative data, like test scores, transcripts, teacher recommendations, that they want to hear from the student. Yeah. And so it's like the personnel statement is about cultural fit. And more and more on these campuses, to be a cultural fit is very, very important, which, you know, can be interesting in these times that we're dealing with. So being a cultural fit can be challenging for students too, especially when it comes to, when we're talking about like religion and spirituality. A lot of these institutions are not, they don't look well on spirituality or religion. And I can say that based on speaking with admissions officers from these top schools, you know, to bring in, I hope this isn't too, I hope this isn't too, but it was shocking to me when I started to hear and learn, because I had students who were religious or wanted to focus on spirituality. And the feedback I got from admissions readers who I know and am friendly with was that it's like red flag to these institutions culturally. Yeah. Yeah. And so how I've coached my students who are spiritual, because I am also spiritual, practicing faith, is to focus on it as a form of personal development. And because this is how I think of it, is you first of all, unless you don't want to go to these institutions because you don't feel like you're a cultural fit, that's totally valid. You know, and there's other religious universities who are, you know, who might be a better cultural fit. That's something to think about as well. For folks out there who are religious and spiritual. But if you're going to talk to anybody, you're always trying to find that common ground, right? You don't want to talk about something that people have no touch point for. They have no way to relate to it. So it's always trying to share your valid experience, but then try to build that bridge of connection in language that they can understand. The personal development, understanding self, the strength that comes from this, and talking about it in not a dogmatic way, but in a way that's again coming back to that discovery process.
Yes.
I know this is a very sensitive subject, and you know I have to bring it up because first of all, we've talked about faith even before we got on this call, and a lot of my students, I have to talk about it with a lot of my students because I happen to have like a third of my students are religious and spiritual and coming from deeply religious backgrounds. And these things are really, really important to them, faith. And so I've just had to talk about it. And then hearing it from the admission side was like, whoa, I didn't realize the biases in these admissions institutions around these subjects of faith and God. So it's something to think about. It's something to be aware of, I would say.
That's it's just good. Yeah. Like you said, to be aware of. It doesn't mean that it's going to close the door, but again, it's back to that being on the same talking point ground. And if you have enough, your student has enough in common and they feel like they can still live their faith, you know, in that institutional environment, and that's where they're feeling called, then to write from their heart, again, back to what you were talking about with those stories and, leaving it there. So, yeah, that is such a good thing to focus on because I know a lot of our families, you know, have that faith-based background and they kind of go, well, how much do we include and not? But I think it all comes back to being authentic, what you were talking about originally. And
you have to be. Yeah. You really have to be. I mean, you can try to build that bridge of connection, but I would never tell my students not to include that, especially when it's important to them or an important part of their story. Right. How could you live with yourself if you don't?
Right. Yeah. You're compromising your faith and your your moral compass and values. And you don't want to have to be, I mean, that's a slippery road to the rest of life and doing that. Yes, to just encourage your student and to be behind them in that conviction is the best way to go. Absolutely. So a lot of our audience have struggling learners. I mean, that's what we focus on. So when we approach these things like the admissions and the essay, the personal statement, those types of things, what can our students do to kind of build in that uniqueness of them for their learning diversity, things that they've learned through that? How can that be a positive that they can kind of lean into instead of trying to avoid or work around or say, I might need accommodations. We often will tell our students these are deficits of yours, but how can we really accentuate that these are positives that they're bringing in with them?
Exactly that, to accentuate the positive. So whenever we have a perceived weakness, the human in its, tenacious resilience will always find ways to adapt. And that's really the storytelling tack to take is these are the adaptations I've made. These are the qualities I've developed as a result of this perceived weakness.
To really
become my strength. Here's what I did about it. I took this journey again, where I came from to where I am now. And this is what I've done as a result. This is the life I've created, and all of the different qualities, interests, skills, exciting projects, accomplishments, achievements that I've gotten the chance to be a part of because of this. And obviously I think communicating the idea of community and how you have contributed to the community of kids who have had learning challenges.
Absolutely.
That's always a positive thing. How have you taken your challenge and given back as you've come through it? The most important thing is to highlight that. Otherwise, it can be a red flag only because these schools will wonder if they have the resources to help. And this applies to learning challenges, but it also applies to mental health as well.
Yes.
So it's mental health is one of those things, the same as learning challenges, where you just really want to showcase that you're the victor, not the victim. Right. So all the challenges, just keep those very condensed. Focus 1/4 of the essay, maybe 2/4 on that, and focus mainly 3/4 if you can on what I did about it and who I am now because of it. And these are the skills and qualities I've developed. And, this is what I did with it, and I made the best of it. And it's made my life better in some way. And I've also made other people's lives better in some way because of this. Helping your child. I mean, I think this is probably the most important part. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a parent, so I can't say this is the most important part, but when I become a parent, I look forward to being able to share with my child that their challenges are really their gifts. They just haven't unboxed it. They haven't fully been able to, it takes time to unwrap these gifts. And it is, and they are, our challenges are our gifts. And, just being able to see that. I know it's so hard when you're a kid and you feel left out, or you feel like you're falling behind, or you feel like just keeping up is a struggle. And so, recognizing, look, this is the pace at which I go, and, that's okay. And there's actually, there's a student who, there's a great student that I know. I was just in a professional speaking group with him. He's 21. I'm going to send you the info. Maybe you can include it in the podcast.
Yeah.
His name is Dylan, and he struggled with dyslexia. Dylan Smith. And he talks with a lot of students about being his work is D for dyslexia. Okay. And he would have to, what he realized one day is the teachers were treating him as if he was like stupid. Right. And so what he did was he showed up early every morning. He stayed late after school. He asked for help. And so the teachers couldn't ignore him, because they said, this is a student who's struggling and he's not lazy, and it's not that he doesn't care. Right. He cares a lot. And it's showing that you are just resiliency. Showing that resiliency as a person. What are you willing to do to overcome it? Communicating all those details, the X, Y, and Z of that is so important. And, that's what schools are looking for. They want people like that. They want, that's inspiration for other students.
Exactly.
They don't want students who it's like, oh, it just came easy for them. That's not
right. Yeah.
It's actually those are the students who have the hardest time with admissions, is that everything kind of came easy.
Yeah.
And they want they want to see that personal development journey,
Yeah. I remember a friend telling me, she's like, my son wants to get into like one of these top schools. And she's like, they're asking now for portfolios and all this. She goes, he's only good at test taking. And I was like, oh no. Because the things have changed, and just having a good or high test score doesn't really count for as much anymore. And that's great for us, our kids, the ones that do struggle and that do have that resilience and say, I'm just going to keep going on. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to overcome this by doing what I need to do to accommodate, to improve myself. And in the end, it makes you a much more resilient adult too. And we face so much adversity in our lives, and we can't look at these deficits that our kids have been labeled with as deficits, because really it just gives them a jump on life, that life is hard. And we get to cultivate that resiliency within our home, instead of a lot of parents who have kids that they get things really quick. They launch them into life, and then hard things hit, and they aren't in your home anymore. And it's so much harder. Yeah. I have 3 adults now as kids, and those problems don't get easier. They get much more difficult. And so, yes, I do. I value that. And I want you to embrace that as a parent who is going through those things with your kids, is that your room has been provided for you to have those conversations, to dig in deep, and to find answers in those times. So, yeah. Also,
and this is why, especially for students, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's good.
Is students who do have those learning challenges and don't fit into the box, give them the skills to succeed in other areas. And that's why I say communication, speaking. You have dyslexia, learn how to speak, learn how to connect with people, learn how to organize people, develop other sides that are more interpersonal. And actually those skills can be really, those skills are soft skills. So in some ways they're even more valuable
yes,
than
exactly.
the things that we think are so important on paper. Those are the things that, when we know how to build relationships with people, and we know how to connect and communicate with people, it will help us throughout our whole life.
Absolutely.
If we understand how to seek out information and build relationships and build mentorships and learn from people, if there was one skill that you would want your child to have, it's that. Learn how to connect with random strangers. Learn how to ask questions of people they've never met before. Learn how to email someone, cold email someone, and ask for, hey, I would love to work for you for, 3 weeks and shadow you. I've got this time off. I'll do it for free, even if, I just want to learn from you. It's like, learn how to find the people who are doing things that they are excited about and want to learn from. Right. And how can they follow that path? How can they find a route to that person? How can they find someone who's doing something similar and connect with them? If you understand, if students can learn how to do that, they will succeed no matter what, is my belief. about that. That's just one skill that has helped me my whole life. And I had to learn it. I had to go to Asia and figure that out for myself, but how to connect with people, how to build those relationships with people of multiple generations, how to talk to older people.
Right.
So important.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just building your story. I mean, we've been talking about that with the college admissions and it's a story we're living out. And the more just, different twists and turns that it takes, when you think about, one of the movies they love to watch, and it isn't the ones with the predictable ending where everything is happy and, goes good from beginning to end. It's those times where those struggles hit and then they overcome, and our lives are built like that. And you're just launching your student into that next phase, into college. And there's so much more ahead. So,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is where it gets exciting. It's not a smooth road, especially those early 20s that transition into adulthood. It can be very bumpy, especially with what students have dealt with, how much change they're seeing in their life, how much access and exposure they have to media. It's harder and harder to find peace mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And helping them find ways to find peace is probably the most important, to find ways to find. And I'm talking like basic stuff. Yeah. Like when you're feeling bad, when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling overwhelmed, can you get your food, your sleep, and your exercise right?
Right.
Those three basic things, start there and build out from that. I just think sometimes we overcomplicate mental health, and it sometimes just comes back to the basics, self-care, right? And being able to find that space of being able to relax.
The statistics now are that students who are graduating in this, or they're teenagers right now, they will change careers 7 times in their lifetime, and so that just puts a whole new spin on how do you prepare, what are you looking for in a college, maybe even, and then how can that learning experience, not just the degree, but the learning experience at the institution, provide for what you need to know further on. And so that's kind of something I walk through with all my kids is, are you learning how to learn? Do you know what fills you? What drives you to learn more? Because you're going to have to change that up at some point. It's not like when my parents, my dad was an engineer all of his life, and he just worked for one company and that company took good care of him. That just doesn't happen anymore. And so, things have shifted and changed so much in just the last couple, just since from grandparents on to, kids right now that are in the college seeking process.
I think you're right. And it's about, I think, skill building. The market we're moving, the emerging job market is going to be very focused on skills. Less interested, they're making a lot of accommodations for students who maybe haven't gone to college or haven't gone a normal route, but who have developed a set of skills. And again, have found ways of connecting with people who can help them build a career path or a pathway. It's all going to be about skills and relationships. Yeah. It is anyway. Yeah. It is already. And so those two things, skills, communication, relationships, those 3. Yeah.
So that brings me back around to this question, college admissions. What if a student doesn't even know if they want to go to college, and going through this college admissions process? What would you say to a parent that says, well, I don't know if my student wants to go to college or not. Should we try? Should we go through this? What would be your response?
Well, I would say is if you don't want to go to college, I don't see a problem with that. There are so many alternatives out there in terms of education innovation. might be fringe right now, but I'm part of a big network of education innovators, ed tech innovators. You can learn anything online. And it just depends on what type of person you are. Right. Do you need a container? Do you need a very focused schedule? Do you need something do you need that kind of support? Or are you more independent and self-directed? It really just depends on what type of student are you working with. And, how will you, if you don't go to college, maybe instead of being like, I'm not going to college, take a gap year and do something in that gap year that helps you get to know yourself better, where you feel productive and you're contributing to something and you're learning something. And there's lots of opportunities out there to find, whether, you're going abroad to teach English, whether you're, doing a different type of program. Right. And I have a lot of resources on this that I can share with you, Peggy, after. Yeah. But, there's City as a school. There are, there's just like a lot of go traveling for a year and work your way through Europe and Asia. There are so many things you could do. I went to college. I'm glad I went to college first because I kind of got it out of the way. But do I think college helped me? I don't know. Maybe I think it gave me the confidence to pursue things in my life because I had that degree. I had that piece of like social credit, right? Which is, I guess, what it is. Right. But I would say that that's less and less relevant, but it just depends on your student and looking at, the pros and cons and what are the options? What are the options that you're looking at? Right. And and there are able to commit to something. Yeah.
For certain career paths, of course, you need a degree for, and so you don't want somebody doing a medical surgery on you that has had no training. But there are some things that I've even I interviewed a guy a while ago, and he said I would never hire a marketing major. He said because what they learn is marketing from a professor who hasn't been in the field, and marketing changes month by month. And especially now that, we have social media that changes their algorithms and, all these things that just change so quickly. And so that definitely has a lot of merit on both sides, depending on what you're pursuing. But I think going back to like just the essay, and writing that essay, I could see that as being relevant for any student, no matter whether they were going to go into college or not, because we're back to, to what we were talking about in our conversation at the very beginning, was just the process that the student has to go through in order to get that concisely written and what they discover about themselves.
Yeah. It's the journey of looking within and self-examination that is so rarely explored with somebody. I think that's one of the reasons why parents like to farm these things out. It's essentially what you're not just getting. I think when you're hiring somebody, you're not just getting like somebody who's an expert in this field or a creative writing coach or whatever, or project manager, but you're getting somebody who can mentor your child for 6 months. And there's like tremendous value in that process. At least that's how I look at my job. I don't look at my job as like, well, I'm just an admissions consulting and I'm trying to like get these kids across the finish line. There are some kids that you do that with because they're not engaged in the process. But most of the kids I work with are very engaged in the process and they want to learn and we build a lot of really incredible, like all my students, I'm on text with them all the time. Even after this process, we're talking, voice noting back and forth. I just have deep friendships with all of them. And I have a lot of relationships with Gen Zers in general, because look, they're a very small generation. They're the most antisocial generation. And they're the generation that really got, in my opinion, kind of screwed because of social media and because of us not understanding social media early enough. And it had a tremendous impact on their development, on their self-concepts, on there. They have a big mountain to climb out of this social media hole that they're all kind of in. And so a lot of them are now looking for personal development. They're looking for mentors. They're coming to me and asking me for support.
Right.
And so they're seeking out help. They want answers. They want answers that social media cannot give them.
Right.
And I think that is the college essay process in a nutshell. It's a process of mentorship. It's a process of journeying through their own thought process. So it's a great way to think about the college process, because don't you want your student to have gone through that before they even get to college?
Exactly.
To have gone through a series of questioning before they ever even step foot on campus. They're like, oh, I really understand myself a lot better. I have a more solid identity. I can communicate who I am and what I've been through more clearly.
Right.
And so there is an advantage to that. I feel like it should be happening through high school, but it doesn't, because we don't teach creative storytelling, or we don't teach these. Yeah, we're so
focused on the technical and the types of writing and the sentence structures. Exactly. And it all comes back.
Which are important.
But again, it comes back to what you were saying before: is this voice? Is this what you sound like? And teaching your student, if you talk and if you read good literature. I found I taught my kids the best writing by reading to them and reading out loud and being expressive. And it's like they thought it was enjoyable, but they didn't realize that they were also learning context. They were learning vocabulary, just all these things that you immersed them in. And we learn through stories, we learn through immersion, and that's, and it just, brings us full circle. This college admissions process really is more about your student than about the college. And I love that take that you have on that. As we're wrapping up, I'd love for you to share some of your resources with our audience. And I know you said you'll share some extra ones that you brought up too during our conversation. So I will definitely put those in the description on YouTube as well as the podcast as well. But do you want to talk about the free college?
It broke up a little bit. I'm going to shift.
Sorry, I'm kind of losing Kate a little bit in and out with the internet. So there we go.
Is that better?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, good.
So can you address your free college prep workshops that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do these free college prep workshops every month, at least. Sometimes it's once a month, sometimes it's twice a month. And we have one coming up on Sunday, April 16th at 1 p.m. PST, 4 p.m. EST. And it's going to be with former Stanford admissions officer, Irina Smith. And we're going to guide you through the whole application process and how it is a narrative. So it's a continuation of this conversation, but just in more detail about how each part of your application tells a story, and how you can make the most of your activities list, best practices for letters of recommendation. All of these, we're going to do a couple of fun exercises to show you how these things actually work in practice. Cool. And it'll be a quick hour. And I think students and parents will get a lot out of it. I'm also going to be leading, I just did a personal statement boot camp this past weekend, and we had like 60 students sign up, over 60 students. So for an online event, I was like, woo, all right, let's do this again.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So I know May is like all about testing. So I'm actually thinking if I should slip in a personal statement workshop at the end of April. Just keep a lookout for that. You can sign up for my newsletter too. I send out an email every week that's full of really good information. You'll get a lot out of it. You'll start to understand this process a lot more in depth. So you can sign up for that, and then you'll get the email when I host that next personal statement workshop.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then you also offer a free consult. Oops. Let's see. I need to change that. I've made it a ticker.
I love that. I was like, oh, cool. That was the first I've ever seen that.
Yes. I hit a button and there it went.
Oh, great. Yeah. And you can sign up you can sign up for a free consult with me, and I'll take you through the whole process, how I work, what my packages and pricings are. I have, if you want to speak to previous parents that I've worked with, you can do that as well. Cool. Yeah, book with me. I would love to work one-on-one with you. I'm taking students on now, and we're getting ready to do a big push of writing in June, July, so you can plan your summer ahead.
Very good.
And I would say, I would suggest that senior year, fall can be busy. And I think also for homeschool students, this would apply. Peggy, you can,
absolutely.
You can probably confirm that. So do as much as you can over the summer. Not that you're not going to have a summer, but try to finish your personal statement, maybe one supplemental, and maybe a long YS essay. And then they'll be in the stream, the flow of writing these, so that when it comes to senior year, fall, they're not trying to figure out how to write these things along with their entire schedule on top of it. It's just, it can be a bit of a dumpster fire when students try to do that in September. So I don't recommend that.
And sometimes like my youngest, she actually finished all of her credits 2 years before I would graduate her. So she had a lot of time on her hands. She just didn't know what she wanted to do with it. So I was like, I'm not graduating you yet. So,
that's amazing.
But there aren't many students like her. And so, so for those that are you kind of going, we got to get this in and get this on your transcript. Yeah, it can be absolutely crazy. It just depends on the student. And
it does.
So but
it's good to start thinking about these things. And that's why I'll be running workshops all summer long. It's just good to, you want to get them excited, because most students think this is like an English essay, and it's not. They think it's some sort of technical academic essay, and it's just not that. And that, this weekend's boot camp was like, students are like, wow, I didn't know like writing essays could be so fun and creative. And I was like,
because it's all about you. I mean, we love to talk about ourselves. And so, if you can turn that around, and then they're going to, they'll embrace it even more than just, I gotta, do research and write something. So
that's the first hump to cross is the, I don't want to do it, and then once you get the excitement going, it helps.
So true. Yeah. Well, thank you, Kate. This has been just an enjoyable conversation and enlightening. And we've had viewers popping in and out. And thank you, Lisa, for your questions that you shared with us. And just for giving us a better perspective of this process. And I hope that this has opened a lot of your eyes, that what Kate is talking about and college admissions maybe not being as scary of a prospect, or to even, something to, it gives you some language now to bridge some of those conversations with your high schooler that is approaching this process too. So,
Great way to... Great. Yeah, that's a great point, to bridge these conversations. I hope that viewers also feel that way. They have a better sense of what this whole thing is about.
Absolutely.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. I really appreciate this, Peggy. Thanks for a great chat.
Oh, you're absolutely. Yes, it was my pleasure. So we are focusing this entire month on this launching phase of from high school to what's next. And so next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about student transition success using gap years. So I know a lot of you are thinking about that, and I have a guest coming on, and she is passionate about gap years and what you can do in that time period. I know I've had a couple students use that, and it's been fun to go with them through those things and just see how they've changed during those times too. So you'll want to pop in on that conversation next Tuesday. That'll be back at our regular time at 12:30 Central to 1:30 Central. So So join us back for that. But thanks again, Kate. I will have all of Kate's links in the description, so you can just click on those instead of having to look at the screen and write those down. Or if you were listening on the podcast, you didn't see them either. So, but we'll make sure that you get those so you can connect with Kate for her college prep workshops, as well as a free consultation if you're looking for that. And then I'll get the other information that she shared, as well as the curriculum I recommended to Lisa. I'll make sure I get those links on there too. So, but yeah, well, thank you, everybody. It's been wonderful having you join us for this conversation, and have a great rest of your week, and God bless, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. I want to take just a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on this podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Peggy Ployer.
If you're hearing this right now, you're probably like, who the heck is this? And why are they playing during my favorite podcast? And I get it. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do want to introduce myself. My name is Trevor Tyson, and I'm the host of Trevor Talks, where we talk to real people about real topics and real stories. I just want to invite you, if you love podcasts, if you love music, if you love books and love hearing from the people who create it, come check us out at Trevor Talks. Simply go to Google or Life Audio, type in Trevor Talks, and it'll pop on up. Hope you have a great day.